Well, while the projector is booting up, thank you to the Historical Society for inviting Fritz and I to speak today about saving the rescue of Gillett Pond and how much the pond has meant to the community over many generations for members of the Richmond and Huntington and other communities around us. It's a project which took about 10 years, a little more than 10 years, and it had lots of twists and turns and ups and downs, but it was a project that was eventually accomplished really because of all the amazing support we had from members of the community. And so we're going to try to give credit along the way to everyone who helped out, but I'm sure we'll miss a few people. So I just wanted to start out the presentation by saying a big thank you to everyone who was involved with helping us rescue Gillett Pond. And I'm actually going to sit down because otherwise if I'm standing on one leg for the whole time, it might not be a good outcome. So Fritz and I are going to kind of tag team the presentation, but here's what we're going to cover, and we would welcome questions, but if you can wait till the end, that would be helpful, so it doesn't kind of interrupt the flow of things. But we're hoping at the end that you'll have questions or your own stories and recollections about the pond and maybe what it's meant to you. So first we're going to talk about the origin of Gillett Pond, kind of the ancient history of Gillett Pond, which is a whole interesting story in and of itself. And then the early years when land was being bought and sold around the pond, and there were various dams built in the area. The hydroelectric years in the early 1900s, which Gillett Pond played a pretty important role in when electricity came to Richmond. And then we're going to talk about just what Gillett Pond has meant to the community and kind of what was the driving force behind Richmond Land Trust and the Friends of Gillett Pond getting involved in the effort to save the pond. And then kind of following up with really how the whole effort came together after the flood in 2013 and how we actually came together to design and replace the dam. So that's what we're going to cover, and as I said, we hope you'll have some questions as we go along, because I'm sure there'll be some things that we leave out. So the origin of Gillett Pond, the pond sits in the southeastern corner of the town in a very steep-sided valley. And it has played an important role in the history of Richmond and the surrounding communities. But to really understand the history of the pond, you have to go back 12,000 years to the end of the last ice age, when the ice sheet was retreating to the north, and as it went, it was shaping the landscape from the pressure and the sheer force of the ice, but also the meltwater, the tremendous amount of meltwater that was left behind as the ice melted. And in the area that would become Vermont, as the ice melted, it created inland seas in the valleys between the mountains and the foothills. And as you can see, the sort of the backbone of the mountains, which had already formed. And Richmond, you can see in the top left corner, the area where Richmond would be one day, was just about to be uncovered by ice, but was still under probably hundreds, if not thousands of feet of ice. So as the ice melted and the meltwater started flowing toward glacial Lake Vermont, it was still dammed up through what will become the Winooski River Valley here, but as it melted, a narrow channel opened up through the Gillett Pond Valley. And this became the Gillett Pond outlet for all this meltwater. And eventually the water found its way down through Heinsberg Hollow. And as it came down and all this tremendous water came down, it left a large deposit of material at the outlet by Glacial Lake, Vermont. And that material that was deposited is still being mined today at Heinsberg Sand and Gravel on Route 116 in Heinsberg. So that's kind of a snapshot of the role that that Gillett Pond and the valley it was in played as the glaciers retreated. So the direction of flow of the post-glacial flow was this direction toward the west. And as the water rushed down this valley, it helped to kind of further shape the valley that had already been starting to form there. But then as the waters receded, the Winooski River became the main source, the main drainage area, and the direction of flow essentially reversed, and the watershed, the small watershed around Gillett Pond, started draining toward the Huntington through Gillett Pond and then across, you can't really see it, but the arm of Gillett Pond that eventually flowed into Johns Brook and toward the Huntington. So the early years of Gillett, or of the area around Gillett Pond, in the late 1700s, early 1800s, Asa Gillett, one of the early settlers, bought and sold a number of parcels of land in Richmond, in the southeast corner of Richmond especially. And two of the lots that he owned were lots 66 and 67, which would eventually become the area where he farmed. And you can see on the map that the dotted line represents the road which would become Gillett Pond Road or West Whitehill Road. And this solid line here represents Johns Brook. So the intersection of West Whitehill Road and Johns Brook is really the area that kind of we'll be focusing on. And this map, which is from, I think, the 1820s, doesn't actually show any of the other land features like the pond. But later maps did show that the pond itself, and this is one of the maps from the 1869 Beers Atlas of Chittenden County. And the earliest reference to a dam at Gillett Pond was in an 1833 deed from Asa Gillett Jr. to James Nichols concerning the sale of Lot 64, which was down kind of in this area, a little bit south of the outlet of the pond. And the deed referenced the 100-acre lot which was sold by Gillett to Nichols, except for what is now occupied for a mill pond and privilege for the sawmill and any other waterworks. And you can see in the blow-up of this area where, again, this is West Whitehill Road, Johns Brook, and it does show a sawmill and an actual building, which is the mill itself. And the interesting thing is that it shows the outlet being on the other side of West Whitehill Road, so essentially the northwest side of West Whitehill Road, as opposed to where the dam is today, which was here on the other side. So at that time, it appears that there was a dam in this location, and it created the mill pond, which on this map is designated as Gillett's Pond. And by the way, these slides and a number of others are from an historical review which was done by the UVM archaeology, consulting archaeology program, who the land trust hired as we got into the project and we started getting the permitting. We had to, because we were required to get a federal permit, an Army Corps of Engineers permit, we were required to comply with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And that required that we do an historical study as well as an archaeological study, which we'll show a little bit later. Both of those studies are on the Friends of Gillett Pond website, which we'll also talk about. So that kind of took us up to the early 1900s when electricity came to Richmond, and Gillett Pond played a pretty important role in the electricity as it was first used in Richmond. So on March 1st, 1889, Henry Gillett sold his farm to Wesley White, whose name would be used for the road, for $10,000. And about a decade later, Wesley White sold the property, or at least part of it, to Almond Hall. And that deed references the right to erect a dam at the natural outlet of the pond, and also the right to take and use stones from White's farm, either from the surface or from stone walls on the line of the highway. So that kind of gives you a sense of where the stones came from for the original dam that that was just replaced finally last year. Almond Hall immediately transferred the property to Richmond Power and Light Company. He was actually a principal of the newly formed Richmond Power and Light Company. So he purchased the land first and then immediately transferred it to Richmond Power and Light, which constructed a stone and masonry dam at the outlet of the pond. The main purpose of Richmond Power and Light was to operate a hydroelectric plant on the Huntington River at Huntington Gorge. So they built a dam here above the gorge, and then the plant, the hydro plant itself, was below the gorge in an area where there had been a number of mills over the years, sawmill, cider mill, grist mill. A number of different mills had been located in that area. So the Richmond Power and Light actually took over a building that was already there and I think added on to it. And they created a 100 kilowatt generating station, and the lines went overland to the village, where the electricity powered toasters, lights, all the new sort of modern electric conveniences, as well as providing power to the underwear factory, which was located in the Goodwin Baker building. That's a little bit about the early history of Richmond Power and Light, but you may be wondering, well, what role did Gillett Pond play in all of this? And back then, and as today, the Huntington River fluctuated widely, the level of the river. And so there wasn't always enough water to operate the hydro plant, at least at its peak capacity. And so Gillett Pond actually played a role as an auxiliary source of water that could be used at times when the Huntington River was at a lower level. And so you can see that the pond outlet, the dam being right here, the pond outlet going down Johns Brook and coming into the Huntington just above where the hydroelectric dam was located. So the way it worked was that when the operator of the plant saw that the level of the river was going down and more water was needed, he would kind of scamper up, hike up to the pond, Gillett Pond, sometimes in the middle of the night with a lantern, and take or open up the gate in the dam, sort of guessing as to how much water might be needed to supplement the river. And then he would run back down to the hydro dam and wait for the water to come down and see if he had guessed right as to how much water was needed. And sometimes he didn't, and so he had to run back up to the pond and open up the gate a little bit more, and then get back to the dam. So the operators worked 2 12-hour shifts. There was always somebody there, but that job included hiking up to Gillett Pond to release some water when it was necessary. Richmond Power and Light also built a footbridge over the river, right over the gorge, and that made it a little bit easier anyway to get up to Gillett Pond when someone needed to, and it was also used to transport cows from one side of the river to the other, to the pastures on the 2 sides of the river. And that whole system worked pretty well, given the limitations of the river, but it wasn't a perfect place to have a hydro dam because of the river just really wasn't quite enough to keep the plant running all the time, even with Gillett Pond. And also in 1910, power was brought from the Burlington side to Richmond. So the plant only lasted from 1902 to 1910, a relatively short period of time, but it did result in what we know today as the Gillett Pond Dam, the dam that created Gillett Pond. And there really aren't any pictures of the dam that we know of anyway from the really early years. We think that this is a picture of the dam for the 1950s or so, when the Girl Scouts had purchased the property around the pond and operated a Girl Scout camp, which is still there today, although they don't really use the pond as much, or if at all. But so we think this is from the 1950s. We're not 100% sure. The landscape seems to fit pretty well, but there's some other things which aren't, which are a little bit odd about this picture. So, but we're gonna go with this as the earliest picture of the dam that we have. Now I'm gonna.
Go ahead. Keep going. You're good. You're doing good.
Well, so sort of. Fast forward to maybe what most of us, kind of know as the modern era of the pond and what it has meant to the communities of Richmond and Huntington. It's just been an incredible year-round source of recreation. I know my favorite time of the year is winter, when there's great ice, and you can skate from one end of the pond to the other, and it's just there's nothing better than skating on black ice, that first black ice that forms in the early part of the year. Doesn't happen every year, but that's one of the things that I kind of look forward to. But people fish and paddle and play hockey and cross-country ski, and it's really been just an amazing recreation resource for the town. The towns all around, Huntington, Richmond, and all around. It also has provided habitat for a lot of animals, plants, animals, fish, other wildlife, amphibians, and of course the most prominent resident of the pond, even today, has been for many, many years is the beaver that has at times, I think, really kind of saved the dam over the years by plugging up the holes, but their job just got, I think, too much for them in recent years. So anyway, that's also an important part of Gillett Pond and what it has meant to the area over the years. It's also been a great educational tool, and I'm not going to go through all the different studies and reports on this page, but Bob Lowe, neighbor to the pond, has kept an amazing list of uses of the pond, educational uses, and studies that have been done, and it's really been a place that's been well studied and well used by educational endeavors over the years. Skating on the pond on New Year's Day. This is, I think, probably around 1992 or 1995, around then. That's been a tradition, that's happened for many, many years. And as I said, paddling, just really one of the most spectacular places to paddle anywhere around. And it's really the only, large body of water in Richmond that's open to the public and, is open to paddling and other types of water sports. So the dam, as probably everyone knows, had seen better years, and over the years it just kept deteriorating, and through major floods, and to the point where on the right you can see it was now flowing across the bedrock that was under the dam. There's bedrock in this area, and then this area is just stone down to the ground. Water was flowing, through the dam, under the dam, over the bedrock, to the point where the level of the pond had been going down and down. July 3rd, 2013 was kind of the coup de grace, if you will. It didn't actually affect the dam that much. The water basically overtopped the dam, but the dam actually survived miraculously pretty well. But after that storm, the Department of Environmental Conservation, which operates the dam safety program, inspected the dam and notified the Girl Scouts that the dam was in such a bad condition that it needed to be either completely replaced or removed. And so that sort of set the stage for what would be kind of the next 10 years of effort to try to save the pond, because there were many people in the community who really didn't want the dam to be removed, even though in many cases that is the best course of action, or can be the best course of action for the environment. But there were enough people, Richmond Land Trust and others, who really felt that the pond was an important recreational resource and important for habitat and biodiversity, and so that was our focus, and that's when the community came together to save the pond. So I'm going to turn it over to Fritz.
As you can imagine, a property that has a dam that's been all but condemned is a real hot potato. Nobody wanted to take it. The VLT wasn't interested, the state wasn't interested, the town wasn't interested, the NRC, nobody, oh no, we're not going to touch that. So who were the idiots that said yes? Well, it weren't idiots. They were mostly the neighbors. The neighbors and two towns, so Richmond Land Trust and a lot of individuals from Huntington, came together and created a two-community organization. This has very much been a Huntington-Richmond project. Friends of Gillett Pond in the fall of 2014. I'm getting a little ahead here because the result is we raised over $200,000 in just a few months. This hot potato went around. The committee formed probably in August. Aaron, do you remember? August or September of 2014. And by January, we had the money to buy the pond from the Girl Scouts. Now, it was quickly put together, and then once that group was so successful, they said, well, what do we do? Who's going to own it? The Richmond Land Trust was already a 501(c), and we are already set up for all the committees and the expertise to do conservation easements, to do stewardship, and to do ownership of land. So we very much were willing to accept the ownership of the pond. So I want to point out the acquisition team, because this really happened in two phases. It was the acquisition that happened in 2014, 2015, and it was mostly neighbors. So Nancy Stoddard was the de facto chair. She lives up nearby Lou, right? No, she moved to Williston.
Huntington, oh, she moved to Wilson.
Yeah. She was Huntington. Aaron Worthley, who's sitting out here today, and he was Huntington. Bob Lowe, who has property that is adjacent to the pond. Wright Preston was the representative from the Richmond Land Trust. Duncan Keir was also a neighbor of the pond. Elliot Lothrop, who I do not know well. Rob Zimmerman, who was an engineer who helped us with the engineering of the questions of the initial engineering. And John Lowe, who's also a neighbor, and also graciously gave some extra land, which I'll explain a little bit in a moment. But I wanted to make sure these people were pointed out because, you know, it's been 10 years and people kind of forget that these people were involved. And we tend to think that it was our committee that kind of did the project, but these guys were really part of it. So what do we get? This is the land, the light green. That's the actual 88 acres that encompass the Gillett Pond. The town line is, the town line is where? Huntington is right about there, or is it that line?
Yeah.
Thereabouts. So that's the Huntington-Richmond town line, and then West White Hill that goes along the road here, the site of the dam. The dark green is the Roberts Mountain Wilderness Management Area, and you can see the proximity of some of the neighbors. This is Bob Lowe's property, John Lowe's property, Duncan Keir's down here, the Girl Scouts, they're up here. This is Doan, Winifred Doan property, and I forget whose property that is. Another view of this shows how dramatic the hillsides are around, and you can really see where the drainage of the Lake Vermont went through here, and Johns Brook and everything around it. So that's what we acquired. And here is our celebration in January 2015. I happened to be the chair of the land trust at the time. I'm the guy in the yellow jacket. That's me. We were all very happy and very excited that it came together, and I was still happy because I didn't know what was laying ahead yet. So the Richmond Land Trust acquired it. We took over putting together the next committee to actually get down to the work of replacing the dam. We were high off this fundraising effort that was so successful and happened so quickly, and it was the generosity of the two communities was really in full display. We contracted Weston Sampson to develop design. We had enough money left over after the purchase to go right ahead and do that. We formed the Gillett Pond Fundraising Committee out of the people that were still willing to keep going from the Friends of Gillett Pond and the Richmond Land Trust. And we also did something critical, which is we have a great resource in the area, CPG Fundraising Incorporated. That's Christine Graham. She is an expert at helping nonprofits do fundraising. She's helped dozens and dozens of organizations in the area raise money. She was a great resource, especially because of the size of this project. I also wanted to point out this team, and the reason I wanted to point out this team, the GPFRC team, is that we are blessed in this community, both communities, to have such an incredible amount of domain knowledge and expertise available for free. Starting with Wright Preston, who's been everybody knows Wright, and what a great community volunteer he's been. But he's vice president of Northfield Savings Bank. He also knows a lot of the contractors around here. He was a really good bridge to the people that we needed to talk to. Aaron Worthley, fantastic resource for, he's a great naturalist, GIS analyst, and he did a great job on a website and managing the data, which came to be really important. Tracking everybody's contributions, as you guys probably know, tracking contributions, getting thank you letters out and all that. He did all that stuff. Lou Borie, permitting, as we'll soon see, permitting was a huge obstacle. A lot of, it can be daunting if you don't have an expert on board, and we just happen to have the former executive director of the Natural Resources Board, Lou Borie. And it was easy. Hey Lou, when are the permits going to be done? And
That's me.
And he did it all. It was just not a worry. John Lowe was a great, he's a construction consultant and project manager for Birdseye. Brad Elliott, fantastic communicator, as all you know. He does, did a lot of our newsletters, the press releases, all the solicitations for fundraising. And Jim Feinson, former CEO of Gardner Supply. You know, we've got a lot of power on this board. My particular talent is that I'm terribly slow at taking one step back when people ask for volunteers. So I'm always the one standing out there and having to take up. So that's how I wind up being chair. The other thing I can do is I can keep meetings short. So. So the results of the first part was Wes and Sampson came up with the three different dam designs. Earthen, combination earthen and gravity, and gravity. Gravity dam means concrete, and you're going to see what gravity means when we get to some pictures, the fun part of the slideshow, and getting away from all these words. The big thing about earthen dams is they take maintenance and inspection, and that's something we kind of wanted to avoid. Put the investment up front for a concrete dam that's not going to require a lot of maintenance. And so we decided on the gravity dam. Its life expectancy is greater than 100 years. I don't know, what's my lifespan? It only has to last 20 years as far as I'm concerned. No, that's not true. This is the design we came up with. Just a couple of things I wanted to highlight on here. One is that the dam is much longer than the original dam because we had to meet the 100-year flood control requirements of the state. And to do that, we had to get a little extra land here, which John Lowe graciously donated to the land trust for $1. And the other part is that parking lot. As you probably are well acquainted with, parking has been a big issue, especially since COVID, when there was a huge spike in outdoor recreation. All our land trust preserves were just inundated with traffic. Traffic control was difficult. So parking was a very important aspect of this whole project. And Jim Feinson, who's on the parking committee, has been very helpful in getting all that stuff going. And then Aaron did a nice mock-up of what the dam might look like when it was done. So we got to that part, and then we sat down and said, okay, we've got a design. What are our challenges? And that's when we started to realize how much we had taken on here. First challenge, lack of traditional sources of funding. Nobody wants to give you money to build a dam. They'll give you plenty of money to take a dam down, but no, I'll show you a slide in a minute that will focus on that. Community resistance. One of the reasons there's no funding for dams is because it's almost conventional wisdom that environmentalists do not build dams, they want to tear dams down, and there are a lot of people that felt we should take the dam down and just let the pond revert to a wetland and eventually probably other types of landscape. And the third was the permit hurdles, and I'll let Lou go over that. But of course the biggest one of all is the dam design. Back when we acquired the dam, people were saying, well, we think this going to cost about $400,000 to replace the dam. Now $400,000 is kind of a magic amount for towns our size. That's kind of a doable project. And we thought, well, we raised 200 that fast. We should be able to do the 400 pretty quickly. And then it turns out, oh, it's 750,000. That's when we really started to worry whether we were going to be able to do this. And there were a lot of doubters in town, and that was another source of community resistance, is that, another aspect, we were sitting there talking, we were saying, we have to do this huge funding raising effort in a town that is just full of other fundraisers. And our fundraiser could impact fundraising of other projects too, and that was a big concern of ours. So, first challenge was no resources for building a dam, plenty of resources for taking a dam down. This is from the VNRC website. The Wild and Free program. Let us tell you how to make it happen, plus FAQs about dams and dam removal. We'll even let you download a management guide. And if you Google, you can find lots of other resources. You can find people who will give you grants. But when you look for resources on rebuilding a dam or building a dam, that's what this looks like. And this is a serious thing. I mean, you guys are probably used to raising funds and saying, well, let's replace this historic building. There are grants and resources available for that, and there's nothing for rebuilding a dam. Kathleen Gent early on helped us out. Kathleen, hi. No, Kathleen's not here. We helped us investigate grants and found really nothing. Or if there were anybody, they wanted to wait until we were almost done, and then they'd like to come in and be a closer. The resistance part is, I want to talk a little bit about the history of anti-dam activism. The reason we got to that point is in the 50s and 60s, there was a huge effort to build dams everywhere. It was the Floyd Dominy and the Bureau of Reclamation that was building dams nonstop. They viewed a free-flowing river as a wasted resource, and they wanted to dam everything. And if it wasn't for these two guys, Edward Abbey, Edward Abbey on the left, and this book, which many of you may be familiar with. It's essentially eco-terrorism. And this guy on the right, Martin Lytton, who were instrumental in preventing a dam from damming up Yosemite, a dam from damming up the Grand Canyon, a dam from damming up Hell's Canyon in Idaho. Martin Lytton did it by basically inventing river ecotourism by starting river trips down the Grand Canyon and other rivers. And this is a photo of yours truly rowing one of Martin Lytton's dories down Wild Sheep Rapids in Hell's Canyon in Idaho, a place where there would have been a dam if it wasn't for these guys. So you can imagine that I had a lot of qualms about being on a committee to rebuild a dam, because I'm going to have to explain this to all my friends. Fortunately, Martin's dead, thank you. I didn't have to talk to him, but I had to talk to his son, who I'm still good friends with. And who was the one that settled those qualms? And hopefully it settles all your qualms. That was Aaron Worthley, who, as a very knowledgeable naturalist and outdoor enthusiast and outdoor sportsman, put together a slideshow which you should all take a look at on the gillettpond.org website, which Aaron maintains. Excellent resource. The slideshow is terrific. He put it together because a lot of the naysayers were in Huntington. There were some in Richmond too, but he really needed to convince the Huntington Conservation Commission to loosen up some money for this project. And as you can see, just starting out, this is the checklist for their eligibility for funds. Preserves and restores biodiversity, especially for rare species. This isn't something you usually associate with dams. Open green spaces, you don't associate it with dams. Provides recreational opportunities, yes, it does. Dams do. Preserve outstanding scenic views, in this case, definitely. And preserves wetlands and water resources, including vegetation and waterways. So it met their criteria, and their criteria are actually pretty good criteria for environmentalists and conservationists. But this is the one that got me the most. Dam plus pond equals more biodiversity. One of the things about Richmond is we are all woodland. If you look at a satellite view of the town, it's all woodland. You can barely pick out the town and roads, and maybe a few puddles here and there. So having a flat water resource is not a terrible thing in any way. And this is an eye-opener for me. So the biodiversity he was talking about, you get 4 different kinds of what do we want to call them? Ecosystems. Shrub wetland, shallow emergent marsh, deep broadleaf marsh, and open water aquatic. That's what you get if you preserve the pond. Those last 3 go away if you just let it become nothing but a shrub wetland. So you reduce the biodiversity, especially with this particular pond and the way it's, and how it's configured, you lose a lot of biodiversity. So that one was a great one for me. The other thing for me was that I've always said, if we didn't build a dam, the beavers are going to build a dam anyway, and we would be doing beaver control instead of not worrying about the dam. And so all we're going to do is make fat beavers, fat, lazy beavers. So that was very convincing. The slideshow gave everybody a really good resource to point to for anybody who was concerned about what the ecological impact of rebuilding a dam was. Now, another obstacle was the amount of permits needed, and as you can see, there was a lot. And Lou, you want to go over those?
Well, yeah, I don't need to go into it in great detail, but we needed a federal permit, a state permit, which is the dam safety permit. That was the kind of those two, the dam safety permit from the state and the Army Corps of Engineers permit, were both pretty substantial efforts that we had to put together with engineering plans. And as I mentioned, because we triggered the National Historic Preservation Act, we had to do an historical assessment and an archaeological investigation. And then we also needed a shoreland permit from the state and a couple of local permits. So, one permit, would have been pretty easy to keep track of, but getting all these, 5 permits essentially to mesh together was kind of the challenge. Plus the fact that we got all the permits and then it took much longer than we thought it was going to, so we had to get them all over again, or at least renew them at least, and which wasn't necessarily always easy. So anyway.
And one of the good things about this is it resulted in some great documents that taught us about interesting stuff that we didn't even know. The historic review was done by, well, you can tell.
The UVM Consulting Archaeology Program.
Very good.
Yeah.
And they did a terrific job. This is on the website. If you want to take a look at it, it's a great read. There was also the archaeological report, another great read. Nothing significant that was going to prevent us from putting the dam where we wanted versus having to move it. As being a chair of the committee, these are the things that kept me up at night, because any one of them could have stopped it, and suddenly we would have had to come up with another plan. But we sailed through those largely because of Lou's expertise and support. And the next thing was the thing that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, because nobody likes talking about fundraising. Fundraising is a big challenge, but it was a lot of money. The CPG fundraising, as I mentioned before, Christine was great at providing guidance and materials for the fundraising plan. The first thing, again, I want to point you to the Gillett Pen website. We beefed that up, or that is, Aaron beefed that up. Again, I'm going to just say go to it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We also came up with this trifold flyer that really gave us a good intro to talk to people with, and it gave a good overview of the project and our goals, very specific about our goals. And one of the most interesting things about, before I get to the next thing, what we did do is at the very beginning, we had some fundraising success, because we did have resources that didn't say no dams. There were these two resources, the Huntington Conservation Commission and the Richmond Conservation Commission, that said, yeah, we've got money for that. We, right off the bat, got $225K from those two funds. The Richmond Land Trust board members got together and we put in $80,000, and we got 10% of the goal right off the bat. So we started out closer to what we were thinking was going to be a doable amount, which is 475 was our target. We started with a 750 goal, we raised that money right off the bat, and then we're down to 475. This was the interesting thing about fundraising that we learned from CPG. She broke it down into this pyramid of donations. They've done a lot of good studies on successful fundraising projects, and they found that when you go to a community, you have to find these type of resources. You have to find one person that's going to donate $100,000 scale, one person 75, 150 for our particular project. And then it breaks down to 3, 25, 7, 10, and you can see the rest. And then down at the bottom there is many, $100, $200, and bake sales and individual events. These break down into basically two phases of a fundraising campaign. The first is a quiet phase, and that's where you go after this top part of the pyramid. And the quiet phase means you go door to door, you talk to people directly, you don't make it a big public announcement, and you see if you can fill in some of those tops of the pyramid. And then the second phase is heading towards the bottom of the pyramid, the many small donors. One of the tools she gave us, and you may or may not be familiar with this, but there's a confidential fundraising database that she subscribes to, and if you wonder why you get all that crap in your email, it's because people know how much you've donated. Everybody in the room, you know how much they've donated and whether they're going to be donating towards a project like yours. So those resources are there, and we did tap into that. We had to sign confidentiality agreements to do that, but it was useful in just limiting our approaches to people that we knew had the resources and would be interested in helping out. And there were individual efforts. For example, Lou did a long trail project to raise money, and he did raise some money, and he also raised awareness, which is really part of the important part. I mean, a lot of this you guys know because you do fundraising too. There were other individual fundraising efforts. Chuck Senek, who was in the committee early, but kind of dropped out of participation, but he helped with his bike ride fundraiser. Wild Adventures by Jeanette Malone. She has a program for kids to do projects in nature. Grant work, Kathleen Jennett. Artwork, Julie McGowan made a beautiful painting. Kelly Taft, photography, and Natasha Bogar, who has a website where you can order artwork, and there's some artwork for the Gillett Pond that she will donate a little money towards the Gillett Pond project. Okay, so I don't have to tell you that COVID came along in 2020. And that I can't say that that was not a big problem for us, because it was. After 4 years, in 2021, we'd only raised about $75,000 of that $475, and we were getting kind of worried at that point. COVID fatigue was setting in. Several storms had threatened the dam. You know, every fall we worry about, we look at the weather and say, oh, damn, which one is going to take out the dam? But one of the things I've learned, I did learn some things when I was working, and one of them is persistence. And I try to get that instilled in my employees, is that a project can be hard, but if you know it's right and if you're persistent, you kind of got to believe. For those of you who are fans of, what's that show? Ted Lasso. You got to believe, and it really does make a difference. I believed that we could make it. I knew we could, even though we were having some troubles. And then lo and behold, what happens? Pat Leahy comes along and revives the earmark program at the federal level. It wasn't earmarks anymore, but it was a reformed earmark process, and they're now called community-directed spending. And they have a lot more restrictions on it. But it is an important source of funds that's available to anybody, at least for, well, who knows how long it's going to be available. But it's helped a lot of projects in the area, and we just happened to get on the first one, and that was the thing that the dam burst. In terms of fundraising, the dam burst, because by January 2023, that $250,000 grant, suddenly you're kind of past this point where everybody says, oh, you are going to make it. And then money started flowing in. Plus, people were getting outside more, and we were able to meet face-to-face more. And we actually found, if you think back to that pyramid, it started filling in. We actually did get $100,000, more than $100,000 from Ryan Dunn, one of the founders of Dealer.com. It lives right up on West White Hill. We got several from other individuals, Winifred Doan Estate, from Bob and Liz Lowe. And we got that $200,000, and we did it. We had sufficient funds to cover the construction costs. And so in January 2023, we engaged Weston Sampson to start the bid process. We did get sticker shock. There was a little drama here, because the first round of getting bids, the lowest was $1.5 million, and we got kind of blue, but you got to believe. We did a second round of bidding, and J.E. McDonald, right down here in Duxbury, came in at a target which was affordable. After the inflation of COVID and everything else, 830, from 750 to 830, wasn't bad. and we could cover that. And this is what we did. This is the end of, I'm going to stop talking about fundraising now. The grand total, acquiring the pond, doing the engineering, and then the sources of the funds, total of 1.1 million. The important part being that half of it was local fundraising. A quarter of it was feds, and another quarter of it was conservation funds, and a few corporate donations. So, we did it. And we got started. And always have to have some drama. We're ready to go, January, and all of a sudden we said, we got a deadline. Oh, you better do your tree work before the end of January, because otherwise you're going to have to renew a permit, if we could even get the permit, because it's northern long-eared bat roosting habitat. And so we quickly got it together, and we got the, what was it, JD Tree Service to do it. They did a great job, a before and after. And as you can see, all the trees that were basically keeping the dam together, they cut all those down and cleared out the area and got ready for construction. And of course, July 10th comes along and we get first flooding. J.A. McDonald had actually started working on the dam, but because of the flooding, they were called away to do emergency work all over the state. They couldn't get started again until August. And so it was left like this in August. They had a good start, but we couldn't pour concrete because concrete actually has to set for, I think, 2 months before a freeze. So we had to wait till next year. But we were ready to go in June. So we got a really good start in June. Some additional costs were incurred, but funds from the community kept showing up. I can't emphasize how wonderful that was to experience, is that money would just kind of come in when you were least expect it, from the least expected source. We'd get this check. It's $5,000. From who? This guy. Really? I can't believe it. You know, that's great. You know, and then just from sources you never asked them, but that just showed up. That happened a lot. We live in fantastic communities, and ultimately it was covered. So we got started. This is what the old dam looks like: a pile of rocks. You wonder how it stood up, but this is actually some of the mortar concrete that was used to build the dam. So they actually did use some concrete. This is the first excavation of the dam, and as you can see, is that pointer showing up? I guess it is. This is bedrock on the south side of the dam, and it slants down, and it ends right about here, and where these forms are is where we had to start pouring footings. And to give you an idea of the scale of those footings, that's how much they had to excavate. So if you look at the dam and you see this thin wall, and you're saying, oh, is that thing going to stand up? Well, that's what it's sitting on, and this is what the forms look like. That thing is frickin' massive. It's not going to go anywhere. And then we got the first taste of what the dam is going to look like on July 9th. This was very exciting because we had no idea. We picked this pattern. We had no idea how it was going to turn out. And the construction guys were thrilled too, because they thought it looked really cool. In fact, this whole project, the concrete guys and the construction guys really enjoyed it. A lot of it because people in the community were walking by or driving by, and they would stop and they would just say, you guys are doing a great job. And they loved the exposure because they're so used to building cisterns and holding tanks and retaining walls and stuff that people don't even care about. And this people could actually see. So that was really exciting. But if you also note the date here, July 9th. Anybody know what happens on July 10th every year in Richmond? Boomo, yeah. So this footing, the big one, they poured on July 10th. And I went out there, and the guy from VR Concrete, he was soaking wet. It just started raining. And I said, "You got the concrete in, but is this going to hurt the concrete?" He said, "No, this is great. This is actually going to make the concrete harder." And I said, "What about the rain falling and everything?" "Oh, no, we call that a raindrop finish." So he was ecstatic. So that was kind of fun. And of course, we believed and we persevered, and this is by August 19th, the bulk of the dam was done. This is a cute little slide because every single morning, from the time they started this dam, every morning they had to clear out what the beavers did overnight. The beavers really wanted to help. Little do they know they're going to just sit back and get fat now. But it was a lot of work to clear that out. And then finally in September, the final section of the dam was complete. The bypass ran just below this, I think. And so they had to fill that in and then finish the end of the wall. And then you can see the parking lot back there. And then this is the money shot. This is what we were all working for, and when we saw this, it made it all worthwhile. Except for one thing. You notice the water is really low. We had to fill up the pond. We've had a leaky dam for as long as I've lived here, and we had no idea if it was going to fill, how long it was going to take to fill, and if it was going to stay full. That was another real background concern. And so we watched. We were out there. Oh, I got to tell. Oh. Sorry. You got to peek at that. And no sooner did we get it done, but the red hen effect happened. You bake the cookies, can't find the kids anywhere, and you pull the cookie sheet out, and suddenly the kids are everywhere. And as soon as the dam's done, boom, we get a wedding. We don't know who these people are, and apparently flash mob type of wedding is a thing nowadays. They drive around, they see a spot, and they call everybody up. "We're going to have the wedding here at X o'clock." And I forget who took this picture. Was it Bob? Or was it Brad?
So. I think so, yeah.
Yeah. He happened to be walking by, and he took a picture. And it was fantastic. It was a great end, except that it's lost revenues for the Round Church, right? Sorry about that. And we went out there frequently to see how far it got up. And this is our annual meeting last November. And you can see it was almost up. This is where it pours over. There's a little dip in the dam. That's where it pours over. And then on November 15th, you can tell I was watching it very closely. And I said, I calculated, it's been about an inch every 6 hours. Okay. And I went out there, and this is looking down at the top of the dam. This is a texture coat that we put on top of the dam to keep people from slipping. It's looking down at the top, and that's the reflection of the full moon up there. And that's the water just peeking over the top of the dam. And then finally, it's full. And it's been full ever since. So. We're happy about that. Plus, it looks fantastic. And we got our first test of whether the dam was working or not. On December 11th, we had a big snow and then a big rain and melt, and the water was just roaring over that. And you can see that all this riprap along here, that is engineered. It's number 4 stone, and it's this size, and you put this below the dam to absorb the energy of the water coming over the dam. And it works beautifully, and it's a beautiful sight when it's running that hard. And even though we're done, we're not quite done, so we're open to suggestions. We're definitely going to put a kiosk like this at the parking lot. We're going to have a plaque on the back that has the donors, and every donor and all the important people to contribute to the project. We'd like to put some benches out there, trails eventually, but just listening to your annual meeting today, I got some ideas of, this is the first time Land Trust has actually had a site where we can do events that's ours. I mean, we can do them at the Monitor Barn, but this is actually a site where we can do some events and maybe do some fundraising there. But if you have any ideas, feel free to let us know. And that's where we're at now. And now we just thought it'd be nice to see some pictures through the seasons of what it is you guys and everybody in Huntington helped accomplish. And this is summer fishing. This is looking down from the wetland on the south end of the lake, the pond, looking north. This is the north end, I think. Is this the north end of the lake? Towards
It's the north end of the lake, yeah.
Towards Johnsbrook. And that's Kathy Borie, I think.
It is. I believe it is, yeah. Anyway, you'd have to ask her.
Early fall. I don't know how many people here have actually been out out past the T and in that area where you get this view, but it's spectacular. And you can only really reach it by water right now. And of course, full fall bloom. You can see just exactly how steep that hillside is on the west side. It's really pretty spectacular. And late fall, and the black ice, of course. And our very first pond hockey at the new dam. And thanks to everybody who contributed pictures, thanks to everybody who helped us preserve this wonderful community. And now we're open for questions, if you're not too tired after that long, long talk. Yes? Oh, this is for the TV so they can hear.
First, bravo. I mean, wow. You started the presentation thanking a bunch of people. I just want to thank Richmond Land Trust, and this is fantastic. Thank you. Seeing that our town was formed by floods, over the years, especially like in the 1934, was there any discussion when you were talking about dams? It used to be the dams that saved the communities from flooding, and then dams were going away. And was there any conversation about the dam for possible flooding help? Just curious.
There was discussion, and actually the Gillett Pond Dam is classified as a low hazard dam, meaning if it blew out, it would take out the road and it would cause a lot of erosion, but it wasn't going to be catastrophic. There were no buildings in the way. And the road was the biggest concern in terms of hazard. You saw the slide with the flood from 2013. It took out the road. And it was just going to keep doing that if we didn't do something. And now you see the dam actually controlling the floodwaters reasonably. It reduces the energy, keeps the flow at a reasonable rate. It's not going to be catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Notwithstanding any flooding, if the dam wasn't there, what would the water flow be? Would it just be a wetland, or would there be a creek there, or what?
Well, the creek, it's not Johnsbrook that...
It is. It kind of comes from two different directions. Johnsbrook comes from one direction, yeah.
The flow of that stream is very... It goes up and down a lot because of the drainage area from Camel's Hump in there. So a large rainfall will cause a large flow. They increase the size of the culvert under the road after that flood so that it would probably take the flow. So if the dam wasn't there, you'd just see that. You'd see the same flow fluctuations that are going through the culvert now, but they would just be it dissipated all the way down. Some might be absorbed into the ground on the way, but it's most likely going to be pretty much the same.
Fritz? Aaron, not to put you on the spot, but maybe you could comment on what it would look like if there was no dam there.
Well, we certainly speculated that, we speculated that the, prior to human intervention in the 1800s, it probably was a beaver pond or a string of beaver ponds. And that's probably what it would have gone back to, just ephemeral, changing over time. Sometimes portions of it would be dams, sometimes those dams would blow out and it would just be a stream. The main Johns Brook that comes out of the Happy Hollow Valley in Huntington is, as Fritz said, is a pretty flashy stream. So, but it runs all the time. It's a perennial stream. So I think we'd see, you would have seen constant flow, but it would have gone up and down a lot.
Thanks.
Well, if there are no other questions, thanks. Oh, got another one.
Hi, I understand you can't build dams like you used to, but out of curiosity, could you speculate how much the old dam would cost to build nowadays, if you could?
I don't have a clue.
I don't have a clue. We probably would have tried to build it. We talked about just doing it ourselves at night when nobody was looking. Or just leave the stones there and let the beavers build it. But yeah, I have no idea. Sorry. If not, thank you all for listening. Thank you for hosting us for an hour and a half. Didn't expect it to go this long, but we had a lot to say. So thanks a lot.